Howdy folks, and welcome to a scintillating TFL car where we're taking two hybrids and showing you the differences. Now obviously there is a size difference between the two of them. I have the 2022 Toyota Corolla hybrid and of course the Toyota Camry hybrid. But what I wanted to show you on camera is the real difference in terms of size and driving. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Now obviously these two vehicles are very different in terms of size, and you can really see that when they're nose to nose. But there's something important that a lot of people want to know. Which one of these vehicles would they prefer in order to go drive, in order to get good mileage, in order to have an everyday compliant vehicle that gets really good mileage? And we're going to tell you all about it. The Camry is about 192 inches long. The wheelbase is about 111 inches in length. Now what's interesting about the Camry is that its size over the past few generations has expanded, but it still basically inhabits the same size in terms of cabin, which is a very spacious cabin, especially for the back seat. The Corolla is 182 inches long, approximately, with a 106-inch wheelbase, significantly smaller than the Camry. And you can really tell that size difference when you sit in the back seat. Starting with the Camry, we have a 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine hooked up, of course, to an electric motor. Output combined is 208 horsepower. This vehicle, combined EPA numbers, 46 mpg, which is incredible for a vehicle this size. Now, it does have the eCVT, electronically controlled continuously variable transmission, which means it's not very much fun to drive, but it is a hybrid. Now, speaking of hybrids, let's move over here. Now this is the Corolla, and this has a 1.8-liter four-cylinder engine hooked up, of course, to an electric motor. Now combined, this one gets 52 mpg, but it also puts out 121 horsepower combined, which is okay. Anyway, it also has an eCVT, an electronically controlled variable transmission. Yes, and it's also not very much fun to drive, but both these vehicles actually have decent acceleration, especially up here. Yes, they're front-wheel drive cars. Yes, they're hybrids, but because of that little electric motor helping out, they don't lose as much power off the line like a lot of basic naturally aspirated engines would. Starting with the Camry, obviously, more headroom, more shoulder room. Altogether, a big fat monkey like me has a lot of space. I do like the fact that the way they shape the door panel is quite comfortable on my arm. Soft material, a lot of soft material. That is a 9-inch screen. Comes standard. A stereo system, gives you 6 speakers. This area here is fairly uncluttered. I do like the fact that they actually give you a proper lever to put it into gear, which is great. And of course you can go Eco, Normal, and Sport. Honestly, there's a big difference between Eco and Sport, but when you put it in Normal, it doesn't really feel like it's that much different. I just leave it in Sport. You can put it in an EV-only mode, but you have to have the battery fully charged, which means driving and using a lot of regen, and you're not going to go very far, like maybe a mile at slow speeds. There is a reason why the Camry is one of the best-selling vehicles in its class, and why a lot of people just like them, because they're comfortable, they're capable, and they do everything well. Welcome to the interior of the Toyota Corolla Hybrid. You can only get it really in one flavor, but the good news is you got a lot of standard features, and that's including this 8-inch screen, and what I consider to be a very well-sorted, very simple interior. I like the fact it's not crowded with buttons. Steering wheel is pretty much the same, so steering wheel's pretty much the same between the two cars, just slightly different, I think, in size. And you do have the drive mode differences here too, because EV mode, once again, you're really using that to cruise around your retirement home, or in terms of drive mode, you can go into Power, Eco, and regular, and that's pretty much it. No major differences between those, by the way. Yes, they'll cut some of the systems, environmental systems and whatnot, in both vehicles if you're going to Eco. Now, one final thing about this vehicle. I have the seat as low as it can go. I always do that because I have a tall torso. I'm about 6'1", and I do have decent headroom. What's interesting is that I feel like I'm sitting higher in this car than I am in the Camry. And the reason why is that the shape of the windows, it's kind of lower than the Camry, so I can see out a little bit more. I actually have better outward vision, at least up front, than I do in the Camry, just slightly better. All right, here we go, stepping into the Toyota Camry. That's right, the big fat guy at TFL can fit, but my head hits. I do have a tall torso. I am sitting behind myself as well. Now, aside from that, if I lean my head back a little bit or move it to the sides, it just sweeps a little bit. There are vehicles out there that have better headroom, at least, in the back seat. So that's kind of a bummer. But a lot of people aren't as big as I am, so they'll be okay. Now, you do have, of course, air vents in the back. That's huge. And you have fairly comfortable seats. I mean, they're squishy. And legroom is pretty good. But it's very different inside the Corolla. Now, this should be obvious. It's a smaller car, not as much space. But here's the funny part. Headroom, which isn't great, is almost the same as the Camry. It's just a little less. Yeah, I can't really move my head around very much at all. I don't mind pushing up the roof, but I will definitely leave marks. Now, unfortunately, you don't have air vents back here. There are competitors in this class that do. So that's kind of a bummer. But if you're not a big ape like I am, I mean, I do have some decent knee room. My feet do fit under the seats, but that's about it. Everything in here is kind of like big boy school when you compare it to the Corolla. But there are a lot of components that are the same. This gear lever, for instance, pretty much the same as the one that's in the Corolla. Steering wheel, pretty much the same that's in the Corolla, with one major difference, aside from size. This has paddle shifters. Paddle shifters with a CVT. There are a couple things you can do with the CVT setup on this vehicle. You can actually help it with some regen and whatnot when you're driving if you're really into hypermiling. I'm not, so yeah, I'm not going to really mess with those. Big disparity between the two of these vehicles in terms of maneuverability, and that's because the Corolla is way more maneuverable. This vehicle is a little more almost 2.5 inches wider. Now, that may not seem a lot on paper, but it really is. Yes, of course, the Avalon exists as well, but not for long. They're getting rid of that. And that one is even bigger. But in terms of the two main players, the two best-selling cars that Toyota builds, not crossovers, cars, the Corolla and the Camry, and then the hybrid version of them. This one takes longer to park. You can't see out of quite as well. And throwing it around a corner, it does well, but the Corolla, even with its skinny little wimpy ass tires, it does a little tiny bit better. But with all that being said, as a day-to-day driver, yes, of course, the Camry is superior. I really do like the way Camrys are built. I think they're excellent cars. It's one of my go-tos when people ask me they want a simple car, what to get. This is always my choice. And in terms of, yes, economy, the Corolla is way better. But I would still choose this car. If you've never driven a hybrid before, the Corolla is a really good place to start. It has nothing in it that really feels like a hybrid. You could drive it every day like a regular car, and you wouldn't know any better unless you would look at these displays. For instance, this one's telling me that I'm drawing from the battery and the engine in order to create power. And if I put it in B mode, here we go. Now I'm returning more as I coast down the hill from regenerative braking into the battery. There is something else that you may have noticed. You hear that? That is tire noise, that is road noise, and wind noise all at once. All of these things are happening to this poor little vehicle at the same time. It's not the case with other vehicles in this class, so it's a little bit noisy. Also, it's a slightly different experience when you decelerate with these sets of brakes. Now here we go, maximum horsepower. Foot's all the way down. And we're roughly at 60. So at sea level, this vehicle does 0 to 60 in a rather leisurely 10.2-ish seconds, I believe is what the automaker says. Look, for an inexpensive hybrid, it handles way better than a Prius, and it just does its job. Nothing special. This would be an outstanding vehicle for an awful lot of Uber drivers because it's inexpensive, it's very cheap to run. It's a Toyota, so you know it's going to last a long time. I mean, that's what they say at least. And it's easy to maneuver, really easy to maneuver, because it's small. I got the sticker for both cars right here. Now, obviously, we weren't able to get them exactly on level because there's something very interesting for those of you who are curious. For instance, the base model of the Corolla Hybrid starts at $23,650. The one we have sitting here comes in at $27,191. Now, bear in mind, for a Corolla, it's pretty much loaded. It only comes as an LE. There are no other options in terms of trim level. Now, on the other hand, this vehicle, the Camry Hybrid, starts at $27,380. So, as you can see, this one fully loaded goes to where this one starts. Now, bear in mind that the one that we have is fully loaded, and it has the XSC trim. Yeah, so $36,974. But once again, you can get a fully loaded one of these at basically the starting price of one of these. And the good news is, for those of you who really like Camrys, you still get a lot for the money. Bottom line is, you get more maneuverability and a little bit more utility, surprisingly, out of the Corolla. You get a lot more comfort and power out of the Camry. Better MPG, better overall feel. Some people think that this one looks better. I personally think that this one looks better. There you go, guys. Two different Toyota products that are not Prius that get outstanding gas mileage. And just so you know, Toyota, they really are not too hip to building electric vehicles. They will eventually because they have to. But they say, and I agree with them to a certain degree, that hybrids are the way to go. And that's what they're sticking with. And with these types of numbers, it's pretty impressive. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.